Charles Duffy, and this is Political Pulse. Tonight we're going to take on the hotly contested Democratic primary race in the 4th District of Maryland, the congressional race. We have the two leading Democratic candidates in the race. The incumbent, of course, Albert Wynne, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And the challenger, Donna Edwards, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
Saw a show recently. It called this race the battle for the soul of the Democratic Party. And as I looked at all the material, it seemed like there are differences between the two of you, and maybe we can bring those differences out. But Congressman Wynne, Donna Edwards calls herself the true progressive in the race, and that she's kind of trying to paint you as the establishment guy, and maybe you compromise too much.
Well, I think I reflect the mainstream of the Democratic Party. I think Ms. Edwards, on the other hand, reflects the extremes of the party. If you look at the people who are supporting me, you find the AFL-CIO, you find the teachers, you find Planned Parenthood, you find NARAL, you find Montgomery County firefighters, you find Montgomery County Executive Ike Leggett, you find Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. I think I reflect the mainstream, and I reflect something else. A commitment to getting things done, not just making rhetorical speeches and taking ideological positions. At the end of the day, people want results. That's the record that I've been presenting.
Many unions, you mentioned some unions there, many unions are also supporting Ms. Edwards in this race.
I've got 41 unions supporting me through the AFL-CIO and others. I've got the laborers, I've got the Teamsters, on and on. I think she's got the national SEIU, but I've got the local SEIU. In other words, the people who work in this community support me.
Ms. Edwards, Congressman Wynne talks about compromise, and he says compromise isn't a bad word. To get things done, sometimes you have to work with the other side, and you seem to say, hey, that's not a good thing. Am I missing something here?
You are missing something, Charles. I mean, the reality is that it's one thing to compromise, but you don't compromise away core values and principles. And so I would argue that indeed what the congressman has done is actually compromise those core values and principles, supporting the authorization of the war in Iraq, supporting tax subsidies for oil and gas companies, taking money from all of these corporate special interests that really deeply impacts and influences public policy.
But to get the good, a lot of times, I mean, they say making legislation is like making sausage. It's not a pretty thing. You have to work with the other side. You just cannot, keep, in kind of a black and white type of position. I mean, is that something that you recognize or would be willing to do, work with the Republicans and to get the good things for the district?
Not only do I recognize it, I've actually done it. I mean, in fact, in 1994, when I worked and led the effort to pass the Violence Against Women Act of '94 that was signed into law by President Clinton, our leader on that was Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah, a Republican. And there was a lot of give and take in that process. And so I do understand the need to compromise and to work together to get things done. But I think it's important also to understand, where you're going and where you're headed. And I think that too often the congressman has given ground, especially for this congressional district, that's really unnecessary. You take a look, for example, at most Democrats actually didn't support the Bush-Cheney energy bill that gave $15 billion in subsidies to oil and gas companies.
The congressman, he said he supported it, but there was some heating assistance there. I think $3 billion for disadvantaged people or low-income people in Prince George's County. So that was kind of an example of him saying, hey, it's not a perfect bill, but I'm going to support it for this reason.
Well, most Democrats, 70% in fact of Democrats actually disagreed with that, including Speaker Pelosi and others who recognized that it wasn't a good thing to give away $15 billion in tax breaks to oil and gas companies, even though there was $3 billion in low-income energy assistance. And frankly, those energy assistance programs have been funded, could have been funded, but not at the expense of consumers by giving away subsidies to oil and gas companies.
Let's get the congressman's response.
Ms. Edwards has it wrong, of course. First of all, I got $3 billion authorized for low-income energy assistance in that energy bill. However, when Democrats became the majority, I was the first one to introduce a bill to repeal the tax breaks for oil and gas companies, and I think that's significant. I wanted to put that money into hydrogen fuel cell research, and we ultimately repealed the tax breaks. The other thing is very interesting. She talks about taking contribution from oil and gas companies. She just took a contribution from the president of Bonanza Oil for $2,300. I mean, it's kind of amazing to me that she would make that argument. Now, let's talk about the Violence Against Women's Act. This is very interesting. She says, well, I compromised. She wasn't in the room. She said she supported it. That's fine. But she's never been in public office, never had to actually negotiate with the other side, never actually had to compromise.
Let me stop you. I mean, I looked at the Federal Election Committee site yesterday, and I looked at the campaign reports, and you're the head of a energy subcommittee. You're chair of the energy subcommittee.
Subcommittee on Environment and Hazardous Materials.
You take corporate money, you take PAC money, but you know, I guess your position is I'm not. You know, you're not influenced. Is that?
Well, I'm making 2 points. One, I'm not influenced because it's evident on the record that I voted against some of these corporate interests. I gave you the illustration of oil and gas. But second, it's hypocritical on the part of Ms. Edwards to talk about this when her foundation, which she heads, has invested in these same companies. She's taken campaign contributions from these same people, represented the Pfizer board, the Bonanza Oil, and worst of all, her company invested in Halliburton, and she didn't bother to say a word about it.
But as far as this PAC money, why not just say, hey, you know, I'm not breaking the law. I'm not a wealthy person. I mean, these people give me money, and you know, I take it, but I can say no to them. Why not just stand up and say that?
Well, I have said that. I've said no, and I didn't just say it. I pointed to the specific legislation that shows that I voted against these people. But I think it's important for the voters to know Ms. Edwards is talking out of both sides of her mouth because she never condemned the investment in Halliburton. She never condemned the investment in the oil and gas companies. And she never turned back the money that she got from the president of Bonanza Oil.
Ms. Edwards, I mean, Congressman takes PAC money and things like that, but I've looked at the campaign reports, and much of your money comes from out of state, and they're not just little donors. I've looked at, you know, the big amounts coming towards you, and there was an article in the Washington Post yesterday, February 3rd, 2008. SEIU's putting SEIU MoveOn.org League of Conservation Voters are putting in this late stage of the campaign, I think $1.2 million in TV ads and mailing, and it almost is like you're the incumbent with this big money coming in late in the game. I mean, can you now say, hey, you know, I'm not the big money person?
I think that's not fair, frankly. I mean, first of all, my job at the ARCA Foundation is actually to use the resources of the foundation to support progressive public policy groups to protect. We've made grants, ARCA has made grants to protect Social Security, to increase the living wage, to ensure that there are voting rights and protections for disenfranchised people, minority voters, low-income voters. I mean, my job at the foundation is to give that money away. And I think the congressman but wait a second, the congressman is actually really confused when he talks about investments. You know, the reality is that when I'm raising money from individuals, thousands of individuals, both from our district and around the country. And frankly, what you don't see on the campaign contribution reports is that we've raised money from thousands of individuals that are actually under the disclosure limit because they're small donors. And so, you know, it's kind of unfair to actually only look at the large donors. We've raised money from thousands of Marylanders that are giving very small contributions, and the average size of our contribution is really under $100.
But you say the congressman's influenced by the big money. He's a subcommittee chair, and he's influenced by this PAC money and corporate money. But let me give you an example. I mean, SEIU came through with a lot of money for you. Maybe your district's interest, if you're elected, would not be 100% overlapping with SEIU's interest. But what if the SEIU came to you and said, "Listen, we need you here, Ms. Edwards. We gave you this money at the end when you needed it." What do you do? Don't you have the same problem as the congressman does?
Not at all. In fact, the Service Employees International Union represents the hospitals at the Prince George's County Hospital. The service employees represent daycare workers in our state and our congressional district. And we also I've received support from environmental organizations, from women's organizations,
but there could be a time when they're different. And so the interests are different. There could be a time when the interests of your people are different. And I'm just using that as an example to say, if that happens and these people these groups that gave you a lot of money come to you and say, "Listen, we gave you a lot of money. we need you to vote a certain way, it's going to, I mean, they get access. I don't know. I mean,
Well,
you're not going to say, I'm not going to talk to you.
No, one thing that's really clear from my 20-year record of public interest service is that I've been fighting for the interest of women, starting the National Network to End Domestic Violence, the largest network of anti-domestic violence organizations in the country. That's why women's organizations are supporting me, supporting the efforts of low-income people to get not just a minimum wage that the Congressman supports, but a living wage so that workers, ordinary workers, can work, one job and take care of themselves and their families. That's my commitment to the workers in our district, to women in our district, to families in our district who want health care, frankly. And so what I would say to you is that I'm actually really proud to receive the support of these organizations that really are representing thousands of members and individual people in our congressional district.
Congressman, you filed a complaint, FEC complaint, Federal Election Commission complaint against Ms. Edwards, kind of just, I think, January 29th, kind of late in the game. And Baltimore Sun had an attorney from the Campaign Legal Center, independent attorney, look at it, and he said it didn't appear to contain any facts that would constitute illegal collaboration. You mentioned her. She's the executive director at ARCA. I guess she's taken a leave of absence. But, there's independent lawyers here saying there's nothing to this complaint.
Well, he's not so independent. If you check the records, you'll find out he also got a contribution from ARCA. There's a pattern here. ARCA gave money to environmental groups. And you know what? Those same environmental groups endorsed Ms. Edwards. Legal conservation voters got over $100,000 from the ARCA Foundation.
But the ARCA gives millions of dollars, and there was you're talking about thousands of dollars. Why?
Well, $100,000.
Why they could be it could be completely independent. They could know her. They could respect
right.
her. And
you're absolutely right. The only question I have is why not disclose the fact that you got $100,000 from the ARCA Foundation? Interestingly enough, she talks about ARCA. They haven't given a dime in this district. They give to people outside of this district. The people who are supporting her, the Washington Post reported, 80% of the money that she got comes from people who don't live in our district, who haven't set foot in our district.
Let's get Ms. Edwards' response to that.
Well, 2 points. First of all, my job at the ARCA Foundation is actually to give away grants to progressive nonprofit public policy organizations. Second of all, it is no surprise to me that all of the major environmental organizations in the country, including the League of Conservation Voters and the Sierra Club, and their thousands of members around the country and throughout our congressional district, are supporting me because I'm an environmentalist and and I believe in strong environmental values. That's why they're supporting my campaign, and I have a history of 20 years of working on these issues, and that's why they're supporting my candidacy. Let me just say, Charles, that when it comes to
10 seconds, because we're gonna have to go to break.
When it comes to campaign contributions, I'm proud to receive the support of thousands of individuals, and none of the PACs that the Congressman cites that are funding his campaign live in our congressional district.
We're gonna come right back with this hotly debated 4th District congressional race with the incumbent Wynne and the challenger Donna Edwards. We'll be right back.
What if you had to choose between a flower and an elephant? What would you choose? What if you had to decide between a 100-year-old tree and a 1,000,000-year-old beach? Could you choose between drinking clean water or breathing clean air? Now you can choose all these things. EarthShare, the world's leading environmental groups working together. It's one choice we can all live with.
We're back with Congressman Wynne and challenger Donna Edwards, and I want to talk about some issues. Let's talk about Iraq and the Middle East. I'm going to read a quote from the New York Times and see what your reaction is. The two leading contenders for president, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, the Times reports Senator Clinton would leave residual forces to fight terrorism and to stabilize the Kurdish region in the north. Senator Obama would leave a military presence as yet unspecified size in Iraq to provide security for American personnel, fight terrorism, and train Iraqis. What's your both of your positions on whether you'll be voting on Iraq next session for sure, but whether to pull out all troops or to leave some troops behind, and it looks like if all troops are pulled out, I mean there would be a vacuum. Perhaps Iran with a nuclear capability would go in there and dominate Iraq. It might create more of security concern for the United States than we have now?
Well, this year I voted 5 times to bring our troops home, to bring them home immediately, but to bring them home safely.
All the troops?
I believe we need to bring all the troops home, bring them out of Iraq. Now, I think we need to put something in its place, and that's why I've introduced legislation for a permanent UN peace and security force to perform the kinds of functions that U.S. troops traditionally perform. We can't be the world's police officer, and we need another entity, a multinational entity, to perform some of those functions. I think more importantly, though, we need to support diplomatic initiatives led by Muslim countries in the region. Egypt has indicated a willingness to take the lead there, both on diplomatic initiatives as well as on security initiatives. So I think using that approach of involving moderate Muslim countries would give us a lot more effectiveness, and that's why I believe we can pull all of our troops out and still play a constructive role in reconstruction, supporting the peace initiatives, and helping to support a multinational force.
Pulling all troops out in this whole Iran situation, maybe with nuclear arms, heavily Shia dominated and dominating Iraq. What does Donna Edwards see there?
Well, I'm glad the Congressman has actually come around finally to join the rest of us in the congressional district in believing that, one, the vote to authorize the war was the wrong vote in the first place, and voting to fund it a couple of times before he's now voting not to fund it is the right thing to do. I think it's actually time for us to pull our troops out. I mean, the best military estimates actually suggest that it's probably going to take now 18 to 24 months to move to the port of Kuwait. That gives us a significant amount of time beginning a troop pullout now in which to bring in those international partners to secure Iraq. I also
all the
look
troops?
Yes, I mean, I think it's time for all of our troops to come home, and we don't need permanent bases in Iraq. It's also true that the national intelligence estimate on Iran suggests that, in fact, now really is the time to engage in a diplomatic offensive with Iran, rather. To make sure that we can come to some negotiated agreement so that they don't develop the nuclear capacity.
You mentioned the Congressman's vote to authorize the war, but Hillary Clinton voted for it. The majority of the U.S. Senate voted for it. Joe Biden, John Edwards, 40% of the Democrats in the House of Representatives voted for the authorization. Basically they said, hey, we thought they had nuclear weapons. This is what the president told us. He admitted it. The Congressman admitted he made a mistake. What's wrong with that? Why, we all make mistakes. We're all flawed. I mean, what is that something that you can write off as, hey, why, he made a mistake, but many people did. Hillary Clinton, who might be the president of the United States.
Well, it's a question of judgment, frankly, and that was very poor judgment. And indeed, 60% of House Democrats actually voted against the war, and including a majority of the Congressional Black Caucus voted, an overwhelming majority of the Congressional Black Caucus, including Maryland's own Elijah Cummings, voted against funding the war. But let's move forward. I think it's going to take a really strong effort in the Congress to have somebody who's willing to actually stand up in the Congress, even though it may mean standing up against Democrats and saying it's time to pull our troops out of Iraq, to bring in our international partners who've largely walked away from Iraq and our partners in the region, and to focus on the core of the Middle East to try to resolve those issues so that there are not residual effects coming out of Iraq into the other parts of the region.
You have a lot of terrorist groups. You have the Hamas in Lebanon, Palestine, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Taliban. I mean, a lot of these issues comes up with the U.S. Congress. You have Israel over there in the middle of everything. But what's your general, view on just fighting terrorism, maybe peace in the Middle East? And I know that a lot of that's dealt with in the executive branch.
Well, first let me say something. She accused me of poor judgment. That's to say that Hillary Clinton, John Edwards, John Kerry, Steny Hoyer all had poor judgment. For someone who's never held public office, never had to review intelligence estimates, I think that's pretty nervy. My argument is this. We made a bad decision. It was a mistake. We ought to get out. I don't have a problem saying that. But for her to try to substitute her judgment, inexperienced as it is, for that of other established political leaders, I think is pretty naive. With respect to dealing with terrorism, let me say this. It's a very serious problem, and our city, our region is the #1 target. One of the things I did was get money to protect our metro system. We now have nerve gas sensors that I helped fund. I take this matter very seriously. On a larger scale, I mentioned the UN Peace and Security Force that I introduced on that. But we've got to do something much different. We've got to step back a minute and say, wait a minute, what's feeding this terrorism? One, poverty, lack of hope. We need to invest in foreign aid to help moderate Muslim countries and even extremist Muslim countries have economic opportunity so people don't feel a sense of hopelessness and are therefore easily swayed to the cause of terrorism. I think we also need to have much more initiative with respect to the Israeli-Palestine problem. I think if President Bush had continued to engage as President Clinton did, it would have had a de-escalating effect because it would have shown people we were making progress.
Let me move on to some other issues. And we have immigration. I mean, in the presidential race, immigration reform is talked about. It's a huge issue. It might even turn that presidential race. But 12 million illegal immigrants. I'm sure there's some in the 4th district. It's going to be an issue you're going to have to deal with next session in Congress. Could well be a comprehensive package. But what's your position on this whole whether illegal immigrants have to leave the country to get in line to become a legal citizen, or whether they can stay in the country? What's your position, Ms. Edwards?
Well, I think we have to have a comprehensive immigration policy that at the federal level. I think, unfortunately, because the Congress has largely now walked away from immigration, that indeed you've got local jurisdictions, even in our region, who are setting their own immigration policy, and that's unacceptable. So we need a tough, fair, strong immigration policy that protects our borders, both north and south, and deals with our borders on the coast. And also, I think it's really important to have a policy that recognizes that we have 12 to maybe 15 million workers who are here, who are undocumented, who need to be brought out of the shadows so that they're not being exploited in the workplace, and also depressing wages locally for those of us who are here legally. And we need to make sure that we have trade agreements that that don't require a situation where corporations are leaving the United States, incentivized to go to another country, depress wages there, and then push migration northward.
Does your position differ on this, what they call amnesty, or whether to send illegal immigrants back to the country to get in line and
I think going back to their home country doesn't make any sense. It's cumbersome and not workable. I've co-sponsored a comprehensive immigration bill that would allow people a pathway to legal employment. I think that's critical because illegal employment, which is what's going on now, pulls down wage scales. But the critical issue is if we have legal employment, we also collect taxes, and that helps pay for infrastructure, hospitals, and schools. And that's what people are concerned about, that everybody pull their weight. My approach emphasizes that everyone pulls their weight. My approach also emphasizes employer responsibility. Once we set up a system of legal employment and documentation, we have to penalize employers seriously, significantly, if they violate that, because we want people to operate in a legal framework and not have employers trying to exploit illegal immigrants.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to universal health care. You hear, I think there's 45 million people in the United States that are uninsured. But really, the country's running deficits, hundreds of millions a year, and then we have $10 trillion of debt almost. But there's certain plans out there that people are talking about to have universal health care. Do you agree with any of them, or what is your plan, and how would you finance it? I mean, would you raise taxes? Would you vote to raise taxes?
Well, I think that we have to go and move toward a program of universal single payer health care, because we have 47 million people without health care. In Maryland, the numbers are 800,000 or so who have no health care, and then a whole bunch of folks who have health care that just doesn't really work for them. We have to remove the sort of insurance and pharmaceutical company control over our health care policy, sort of out of that framework. So we're developing a policy where, Americans have access to affordable, quality health care, and we know how to do it. We have those examples in Medicare and Medicaid. We have those examples in the military health care delivery system and in VA. And so we understand how to do it, and the costs are actually a lot lower than these sort of private schemes. The congressman has supported, these sort of, President Bush actually proposed them in his last State of the Union, again, these associated health plans that the congressman has supported. And I think if we do anything for small businesses, we need to make sure that they're able to provide health care for their workers, and that has to be universal single payer.
Let's get the Congressman's views on universal health care and
Well, I'm co-sponsoring a bill on universal health care. Ms. Edwards is wrong again. Hillary Clinton actually was the first person to propose a program for small businesses, the so-called association health plans, and my views were akin to her with regard to that. I've actually been on the front lines, and this is one of the differences in this campaign. Because of my seniority, I sit on the Critical Energy and Commerce Committee that worked on children's health insurance. Because of the tragedy we had with the young man who died of a tooth decay problem, I put in language in the children's health insurance bill to guarantee not only health benefits, but also to guarantee dental benefits. I also supported mental health benefits. So I'm in a position to do things and not just talk about them.
we have about a little under 2 minutes left, and I agreed I would give you closing statements, 45 seconds each. Why don't you go first, Congressman?
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed being on the program and enjoyed the discussion. Basically, I'm saying to the voters, I get results. I can work with people. I gave you the illustration of dental care, but let me talk about the environment. Everyone wants to have a cleaner environment, energy efficiency. I got a $10 billion authorization for energy efficiency block grants to help counties like Montgomery County do energy efficient programs, green programs, weatherization programs for seniors, things like that. So at each step of the way, I've been involved in getting things done. By virtue of seniority, I chair a subcommittee, Environment and Hazardous Materials. We've already passed legislation out of my committee to ban the export of mercury. We're taking up the highly toxic substance perchlorate. We're going to set a drinking water standard for that. You'll hear Ms. Edwards talk about fighting. She's not stood up to Halliburton, the fact that her company, her foundation invested in Halliburton, and I think that's a classic example of not standing up.
Thank you, Congressman. Donna Edwards, 45 seconds.
You know, I'm a public interest fighter. I've worked in the public interest almost my entire professional career. I started the National Network to End Domestic Violence, wrote key provisions and helped pass the Violence Against Women Act of 1994. I've fought in the public interest, working for public citizens to get low-cost prescription drugs for anti-arthritic medications for seniors. I'm a public interest fighter, and I think that this election really comes down to a decision about whether we want change. And the Congressman talks a lot about his seniority, but the Congressman's seniority brought us a war in Iraq. The Congressman's seniority brought us subsidies for oil and gas companies. The Congressman's seniority has brought us policies that are more aligned with the Bush administration, and it's time to return our politics back to real people.
I have to stop you, and I take my hat off to both of you for a race well run, and I know it takes a lot of guts and a lot of effort, and you both have done you should hold your heads high, and good luck to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And remember, if it's Tuesday night at 9:30 or Thursday night at 9, it's Political Pulse on Channel 16 TV. I'm Charles Duffy. We'll see you next week.
Mrs. Abruzzo, I'm Ed McMahon, and we're signing up people for... Yes, I am. Yeah. Mr. Murphy, Ed McMahon. We're starting up... No.
Dreams really do come true.
Hombre, dinero.
No.
Con cámaras. Yes,
Ed
con
McMahon,
cámaras.
see.
Ed McMahon.
Yes, Ed McMahon. We're having our first
Ed
ever...
McMahon.
Yes. Tuesday night at the high school. We're starting up the neighborhood watch in this area, and here's all the information.
Stevie, get down here, please.
No, it's just
5, 6, 7, 8.
No tango dinero. Neighborhood watch. We're having this neighborhood watch, the first one. Right. I'll come back.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Start a neighborhood watch. It's just one of the many ways you can help make America stronger. To find out how, call or log on for this free guide.
to be bigger than life to be a good dad. You just need to spend time with your kids. It takes a man to be a dad.